I quit. I'm leaving. I resign. Now, I kind of debated leaving the room, but then I thought EENA wouldn't be very happy if I just left and resigned my post here. In 2020, a global pandemic filled our hospitals and it emptied our streets. The pandemic left many people unemployed and even uncertain about their future. For most of those who continued to work, new challenges, roles, policies, and demands were abundant. Many struggled to balance competing demands at home and at work, which often left to an unsettling feeling that one was having to privilege their work commitments over the basic health, wellness, and education of family and friends. I certainly felt it, and I imagine many of you did as well. As the pandemic continued into 2021, the world quickly saw a changing workforce as a sizable and significant percentage of people quit, left, retired early, or resigned. The Great Resignation had started, and it hasn't stopped. In the US alone, 50.5 million people, or nearly 15% of the US population, quit their job in 2022, marking an increase from 2020 and 2021. Now, we can focus on the positives by citing that the pandemic may have increased employees' focus on what matters most to them. For some, the pandemic may have altered values in a way that shifted attention away from occupational advancement and material gain to things like families, relationships, and friends. That is, the pandemic could have elicited a deep reflection on the meaning and importance of a life worth living. And sometimes stressful or unfulfilling jobs are no longer part of that picture. Research into the impelling factors has also found that low pay, limited opportunity for advancement, and feeling disrespected were among the leading reasons why people sought other opportunities. Others have cited uncaring and uninspiring leaders or lack of direction as among the primary reasons for their exodus. While many have remained in the workforce, many have opted for non-traditional roles or remote roles that offer more flexibility. For emergency services, the Great Resignation has left many, if not most, agencies scrambling to recruit, train, and retain their very best employees. Chronic understaffing, which has been present for as long as I've been working with emergency services, has become worse. Mandatory overtime, lengthy shifts have impacted morale, job performance, psychological health, and physical health. Employees who are late career or even mid-career, they're not going anywhere. But a broad sentiment is that these employees are tired, burned out, and many feel trapped. And adult humans don't really like feeling trapped, and then they act poorly, right? Agencies are struggling to get employees through the process of training, as the challenging work hours and stress of the job may not be deemed as worth it to a younger generation who can make just slightly less in a job that has fewer demands and fewer challenges. Everywhere is hiring, so our newest employees have many options. In my various roles, I've heard many 112 call takers express frustration that technology exists for them to do their work from home or from other locations, and yet there's been no real movement in that direction. Amidst the Great Resignation, what can we do? Well, the first challenge is to retain our best employees, who at this stage may be quite exhausted after carrying an undue load over the past few years. I'll be talking more about that in my session on Friday morning. The second challenge is to fill the void left by those who resigned. And this session today is going to focus on how to do that with some really great examples from the industry. Mr. Robert Rucăreanu, I'm saying these names wrong. I'm sorry. People can help me with my Romanian after this while we drink alcohol. And Georgiana Săbăreanu, who also tried to help me pronounce her name earlier, and I totally forgot, so I apologize. Robert is the HR director at Special Telecommunications Service, STS, while Georgiana is a former 112 call taker who currently directs training for STS while providing continuous operational support. STS is the administrator of the 112 emergency system in Romania. They will be discussing recruiting, selection, and training processes for STS.
So, good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see so many people in the room. I was fearing that maybe we'll have our own small version of the Great Resignation, but fortunately for us, there are still a lot of you in the room, and thank you for being here. And also, thank you for bearing with us, since we are the only ones standing between you and the free drinks. But hopefully, we will have some interesting points to talk about. Because in the end, we are talking at this event about technologies, we are talking about regulations, we are talking about how we organize ourselves, but in the end, everything turns back to people, the human resource, which is so important for all of us. Okay, as my colleague said, I have a lot of things to say, but I will go quickly in order to stay in the time I have to me. So, of course, I have an agenda, but I will go quickly over it in order to surprise you later on, right? First of all, a few words about STS. Who is STS? So we are the ones who are administrating the 112 service in Romania for nearly 20 years now. There will be 20 years next year. And apparently we did a good job so far, since we are still here and people are quite satisfied with our service. We are involved also in the regulatory bodies in Romania, and our main focus is on improving the quality of the service, the technology behind the service, and last but not least, of course, the people satisfaction, the people's in Romania satisfaction. Okay, so we are talking about the Great Resignation. This is something that, for us in STS, we didn't feel it. One thing I didn't mention in the first slide is the fact that we are a military institution. Why is this important? Well, I think you will understand from the next slides. So, quickly, about the key facts. You see a comparison between a percentage of the total number of emergency responders, percentages on people that got hired, newly hired, and the people leaving. As you can see, we had quite a balanced situation in 2020, and then we managed to bring in more people than we lose in the last 2 years. This doesn't mean that we have an overflow of people. We still need people to hire. We still need people to bring in because of the very specifics of this job. Concerning the people leaving, as you can see, during the last 3 years, the vast majority of them are leaving because they are retiring. A very small percentage, far less than 10%, are leaving for what we call the voluntarily reasons. Why is that? Well, we'll see. I mentioned once again, we are a military institution. How do we bring people in? Because in the end, this is the most important thing. In my opinion, two things are important in today's world. First, and it's always been available, bringing people in. Identifying the right people for the job. Identifying the right talents, as the buzzword is saying. And second, and this is becoming more and more important, keeping people in. The retention is becoming far more important than bringing people in. Why? Because strange things are starting to happen after the pandemics. The Great Resignation, far more dangerous, the quiet quitting. And this is something that it's affecting all the HR organizations in the world. And this is why HR leaders are starting to think more about retaining rather than hiring. This is not necessarily true for emergency responders, since, as we see here, who are the emergency responders? Well, we ask a lot of them. We want them to have technical skills, but also non-technical skills. We want them to be very good in stress management because of the specifics of the jobs. They need to know something about quality. We want to provide quality services to the people calling. And of course, last but not least, as if it's not enough, they need to have some basic legal knowledge, since they are sometimes acting on a very thin line in order to provide the help for the people calling in. So in the end, yes, we can say they are the faceless heroes. They are not the ones solving the problem directly, and people tend to forget about them. Everybody see the firemen coming in, the police, the ambulance, but they forget that somebody send them there. And unfortunately, as it happens, the press do not tell much about the successful story. They mostly relate to the ones that are not that successful, to say the least. While we have, because of these qualities these guys need to have, these men and women need to have, we can safely say that they are the faceless heroes. And even though they are not there, they are the ones taking the call, understanding what's happening, asking the right questions, as we see in our previous session. So we ask a lot of them. Okay, let's see what's happening in Romania when it comes to the recruitment process. Once again, 100% represent the total number of candidates. I'm not at liberty to share the number of the exact numbers, but I think the percentages are quite relevant. So, with a stronger blue, I'm a man. I don't know. I was always surprised how women can describe. I only know 7 colors. That's all. There is no dark blue or I don't know, less than dark blue. I don't know. Okay, so with the darker blue colors, we can see the absentees, the very far low, then the rejected after the selection process, and then the last 2 bars show the people that were hired, and also the one we keep in a, let's call it a reserve pool for later hiring in order to speed up the process, because the process is quite cumbersome one, and we need to move fast in case of emergency. And we have some situations where we needed to hire fast. But look what happened in 2021 and 2022. Everything reversed. So we have almost half of them, after enrolling to the contest, to the process, they didn't show up. Then another big portion of them were rejected during the selection process. And we can see that only slightly more than 20% were the ones going through the selection process, and almost 10% being hired. Fortunately, this is due to the fact that the number of people enrolling was a lot higher than in 2020. 2022, the same thing. A lot of people enrolled, and more than a third of them didn't show up. Almost 40% were rejected during the process, and we have, compared to the previous year, less than 10% hired or being in the reserve pool. This was a very strange situation for us. But the reason I'm thinking this happens is, as I said earlier, we are a military institution. 2021 was at the end of the pandemics. And during the pandemics, we all know what happened. A lot of companies, a lot of businesses were closed. So people start thinking of a more stable job. And what's better when it comes to stability than a military career? Because all of the emergency responders are military personnel. So for many people, this was seen as an opportunity to enter the system, as we say it in Romania, and become military personnel with all the stability that comes along with it. But not all the people were prepared. Look at the ones not showing up. I think those were the guys that was pushed by their families. Come on, kid, go there. Give it your best shot. Insert a coin. Push the button. See what happens. Maybe you're lucky. Okay? And also, many of them were not prepared. Why? This is the selection process. Physical training is at the top because there was no room for the writing, okay? It's not in the order of importance. We have a professional examination, which involves three tests. It's a professional interview, a theory test, and also a practical test. easiness of working with a computer, stuff like that. Very important, the psychological examination. Since they are becoming military personnel, they had to go through a psychological examination. And of course, not only because of that, but they will be emergency responders. We don't want to hire angry people to answer to the people in distress. I don't think it's okay. I don't know about you, but also we have a foreign language assessment, because since Romania is such a beautiful country, a lot of foreign tourists come, and guess what happens? They get lost in the mountains. It's a thing we do in Romania. We lost foreign tourists in the mountains. So they need to know at least English. And it's quite an advanced test they have to go through. And last but not least, the one on top, the physical training evaluation, since, once again, we are military, and at least we need to be able to move from point A to point B. Okay, so after this selection process, you see the percentages I discussed about. So, to end my part of the presentation and to leave room for Georgiana, Săbăreanu. Okay? Of course, we face challenges. We don't have the great resignation. Fortunately, we don't have the quiet quitting, and I hope we will never have it. I'm very much interested into this thing, and I'm keeping a very close eye on what's going on. But we have our challenges, of course. People not showing up is one of the problems. And then all the skills they need to have in order to perform as an emergency responder. As I said, handling pressure. We see here communication skills. There is no such thing as a emergency responders with zero communication skills. 112, what's your emergency? At least they need to be able to say, right? Decision-making skills. Since many times there is a matter of life or death. So they need to be smart enough. Of course, we also have our own decision tree, and we train our people. But many times there is no black and white, it was said earlier. They need to be smart enough to move fast and to provide the proper support to the people in need. So all of these brings challenges in the hiring process, not mentioning that it is also a very, very difficult job in the end. And stress adds up. We don't discuss here about the psychological support we are offering to our emergency responders. We will only refer to the training. But this is a reality. And we try to absorb in the graphs with the people leaving, we were only referring to the people leaving the organization. Maybe it would have been more relevant to add a percentage of the people that we absorbed into the organization, because many of them are very good people that are able to perform very well in other jobs inside the organization. So, this was my part. I will leave the floor to my colleague Georgiana. Thank you very much for listening.
Is it okay? Can you hear me? Hello. I will talk about the training process, because after the recruiting is over, we have to train our new call takers. So they undergo a 6-month tutoring, which consists of 3 months of training period. And the training is done in our regional 112 training centers, so they do not stay home. We have several training centers located in different areas of the country. And in these 3 months, our call takers stay there and go home on weekends and learn all they need to know about being a 112 call taker. After these 3 months of training, and after they pass the exams, they have another 3 months of practice under supervision in the PSAPs. Each one of them go in one of our 41 PSAPs. The training process and this 3 months training period contains about 5 modules. One of the most important, 112 applications, procedures, and regulations. Some of our training techniques are role-playing, demonstration, simulation, case studies, brainstorming. We use recordings and case files from real 112 calls because they have to know what a real call is about. And they get to practice with simulated calls at the beginning. While doing this training, we always start with the applications because we find that afterwards it's easier for them to understand the procedures and regulations, especially since we, as I said, have different training techniques like role-playing. So it's important when I'm pretending to take an emergency call to know how to use the 112 app, to know how to ask the questions, where to write them, and how to call the emergency agencies. Also, after they pass the required exams in this 3 months period, they are allowed to take 112 calls under supervision. Another important part of the training period is the communication and stress management techniques. As we all know, the 112 call takers are the bridge between the messy, random ways in which callers that are facing the worst moments of their lives manage to transmit their emergency and the well-procedured way in which they need to present the information to those who will respond. So, in this part of the course, they learn how to manage the difficult conversation that this job requires, and also how to remain healthy and emotionally strong individuals. As Mr. Rucăreanu said, we test them in foreign languages, so they already know a foreign language when they start the training. So this module is centered on a specific terminology and conversation concerning emergency calls. We cannot start from the 0 level. They have to know very well the foreign language, so they can find all those people lost in the mountains. Okay. We also have the legislation part. Knowing and understanding the legislation that regulates this activity is paramount. As we already said, they are military, so they must know all their rights and responsibilities. And also, another important part of the training period is the basic life support course. Our call takers do not give medical advice, but we find that the basic life support course helps them to better evaluate and understand the gravity of the situation presented by the caller. After every module in this training activity, we gather feedback from our trainees. And the questions refer the trainers and the training activity, the quality of the information, and also the facilities of the training centers and the accommodation. And the feedback helped us enormously to improve our activity, to organize the training modules in a more efficient manner, and to ensure a better training experience overall. After this period, in the 3 months working under supervision, they have a designated tutor, which is a supervisor, an operational officer, or an experienced call taker. The new call taker is supervised and receives real-time feedback from the tutor, so all the call taking is made under supervision. They do not take call if the tutor is not with them. At the end of this period, the tutor makes an assessment of the call taker's activity and gives recommendations. Afterwards, there are true 112 call takers, and they receive continuous training, of course. And the topics depend on, can be diverse: new regulation, new apps, complex events, different types of threats. The training is even realized on site or through video calls, depending on the subject and the complexity of the problem. We also discuss with them the difficult situation, manage exemplary by our call takers, because we need to show them the best practices, and we also talk about our mistakes and ways to improve them. So, how do we encourage them? We try to connect to create human connections. All our trainers are former call takers, and it's very important for them. You have to gain their trust. And I'm talking not only about the newly hired call takers, I'm talking about the one with experience. They will better receive new information from somebody who knows their work, who has done their work, and understand what they go through with every call. And we also offer 24/7 support because we have national supervisors which work in shifts. And when they have to manage some difficult calls, we always talk about someone dear perspective. Treat every caller as you would like someone you care about to be treated, regardless of their emotional state. Thank you.